So let's get started. The youth aged 15 to 24 years are the most vulnerable in the South African labour market, as the unemployment rate among the age group was 55.2% in 2019, and graduate unemployment was 31%, which is quite a large chunk of our active population. Now, my first question directed to Onika is, are the fiscal policies in place enough to stabilize unemployment, and what is the private sector doing to help? I'm going to repeat. Are the fiscal policies in place enough to stabilize employment, and what is the private sector doing to help?
Thank you for that question, Fortunate. I think it can't necessarily be a yes or a no answer at the moment, primarily because it's the first time that we're actually experiencing a pandemic at such a huge scale. But what I can say is that just looking at the fiscal policies that have been implemented within the country, we can say that there's still more to be done, right? So, and also if you start also to look at just youth unemployment, we do realize that it has increased, it's been increasing for, I'd say, about 5 to 8 years for now. So definitely there's a high chance that youth unemployment would keep on increasing. But then this is not necessarily to say that people should be discouraged. In fact, I think what I would say is that perhaps what we can start looking at as a country and also as youth, not just in South Africa, but in other African countries, is that perhaps we can start asking ourselves, what else can we do to assist the government in terms of creating employment? And I'm glad that you actually invited Luyanda to be one of the panelists. I do believe that having side hustles, if I could put it that way, I do know quite a number of people that have started just saying that they have side hustles, and eventually those side hustles end up being able to create employment for 1 or 2 people while they're also still holding their full-time jobs. So if we are going to continuously sit back and say that we're waiting for the government to do something, the government has a lot on their plates. But then on the other side as well, I could also say that, but somebody else could, or perhaps somebody else could come in and say that, but this is the government that we voted in. And one of the issues that they've been mentioning that they would like to focus on is the reduction of youth unemployment. But I think what we do have to realize is that policies are interlinked. So if I was to say that also, what is the private sector doing? What I do know is that private sector, particularly JSE listed companies, they're a bit hesitant to sort of increase their investment. This can either just be greenfield investment or brownfield investment. And if you look at it, it's primarily because the government is somewhat stagnant when it comes to policies. And that's something that has been existing for the past 3 to 5 years. For instance, if you were to look at just energy, for instance. So within government, just looking at ESCOM, there isn't much that is being done there except just continuously having committees, which is not necessarily a bad thing. However, if we know that by 2050, our energy resources would have been depleted, that's something that we do have to look at. And obviously, if you're in the private sector, you'd obviously be considerate of energy if energy is your critical input. Let's say, for instance, if we also look at other policies, just such as, for instance, I'll just throw in a curveball here and say the land policies. So we do know that we need to amend Section 25. We keep hearing talks about this. If I'm in the private sector, I'm going to be hesitant to grow my company. In fact, I would rather hold on to my cash and not have any investments because I don't know what's going to happen. And remember, this is something that has been happening prior to the pandemic. So now that we also have the pandemic, I don't think that the private sector would be sort of excited, so to say, to grow or to have greenfield or even brownfield investments. So in a nutshell, just to round up, I would say that as youth, what we do have to do is that, first of all, probably you just have to look within yourself, have some intrinsic motivation to say that if you are youth, if you're ready, or if you're, for instance, I mean, now we're looking at Golden Key, you're within a university. what can you do to increase the intrinsic skills that you have? Remember that I do know that probably Leanda would also touch on this since she's in HR, is that the critical skills that in the private sector and also the public sector people are looking for that are just beyond your qualification. So you need to be able to know that if you're, for instance, part of Golden Key, you'd have to get skills that Golden Key offers, so maybe attend events, improve on how you speak, also not just focus on what you've studied, be an avid reader, for instance. Those are just examples. So to answer your question, I'd say that the policies that have been implemented, are they good, are they bad? I can't give you a direct answer there. The private sector, what are they doing to help? The private sector is sort of trying to ride on triple BE, since also they're also mentioning that they have to create internships just so that they can up their BE level. But beyond that, we also have to notice that even though you're entering as an intern, you are getting skills that are critical. So the private sector is trying. But it's trying, whereas policy reform is just stagnant in the country. So I'll just wrap it up there for now.
Okay, thank you so much, Onika, for such a comprehensive answer. And it brings us to the point that at the end of the day, us as the youth, we have to take responsibility of the skills that we engrave within ourselves. Now, you mentioned something about side hustles, and you mentioned Miss Luyanda. So I'm going to forward my next question to Luyanda. It says, Luyanda, is micro-franchising a potential solution to entrepreneurship and job creation? And does the youth have access to micro-franchising opportunities?
Hi, guys.
Can I repeat?
Can you all see me? Yeah, I got the question, don't worry.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, we can see you clearly.
So I think for me, before I start, there are 4 things that I want to share with you. So, and it's something that I want everybody to consider as I started my dialogue and engagement with the panel, right? So if anything is to be, it is entirely up to you. Yes, we have government, yes, we have systems, yes, we have corporate, but if anything is to be, I repeat, it is up to you. 1, we as young people of South Africa need to be very solution focused. We know where the problems are, we know what the issues are. What are we doing about it? So that's key point number 1. We need to be a bunch of young people that are solution focused and not problem focused. Secondly, proactive. We need to be very proactive and be obsessed about ownership, which will then, support my statement that I'm going to share and my opinion that I'm going to share about micro-franchising as an opportunity or potential solution for unemployment in South Africa. So as young people, secondly, we need to be very proactive and obsessed about ownership, right? And thirdly, which is something that was already mentioned, is that we need to be very intentional about financial freedom. And by financial freedom, I mean that we need to start thinking about different income streams. So you'll hear, the term multiple streams of income, very, greatly when we speak about financial freedom, or we speak about personal finances, or even surviving, financially in this world, right? So solution focused, proactive and obsessed about ownership, and multiple streams of income. If there's anything you are to take from my engagement with you today, is that, and all of that is your responsibility as young people. I always say that you need to be the change that you want to see in the world. And the only way for us to take ownership of this new revolution and be the leaders that we aspire to be or we hope to see, we need to possess these traits that I've mentioned, right? So when it comes to, the question of, is micro-franchising, a possible solution to entrepreneurship and also just combating the high unemployment rates, my opinion is very much simple. So when we look at what micro-franchising actually is. It literally speaks to, the fact that you are able to, buy into an idea or an existing business, which means that obviously it's an easier, form of getting into business, in terms of that you don't require, a large amount of financial investment, and also it doesn't require any sort of years of experience to go into. So when we speak about business, it's kind of like the easier, way to get into business that doesn't require a lot of skill, because it's an already existing idea, an already existing system. And I believe that if done right, and if it is a company that is prospering and it has the right leadership, it does, create employment for a lot of people. And I think it's also a great way to empower, young people in terms of ownership, which is one of the solutions that I do propose for us as young people, right? So I was listening to a talk, I just can't remember by who, but it was during a webinar that I watched by Duke Corporate Education, where they said that entrepreneurship, as is an economic empowerment tool for women. But tonight, I want to rephrase that and say that entrepreneurship is an economic empowerment tool for people, for us young people, and for everyone, not just females, right? So is microfranchising a possible solution? Absolutely, because it is, a business idea. It does create employment. It does empower people financially, right? But there are certain things, like I said, that we as young people have a responsibility for. One being that we need to develop a new set of skills and an entrepreneurial mindset. So it's pointless going into a franchise, going into business, when you don't possess those skills. So for a business to be sustainable, and by business I mean any idea, you need to possess the right skills and have the right mindsets. So this is something that we now have to do as young people, is that we need to develop these new skills. And developing a new skill does not mean that you need to go to university. With the Internet of Things now, we have, we were very lucky to learn things through other people, through short courses, through Google, and any other, material that we have available, through books, through conversations, networking. So there are very different ways in which you can acquire these skills. You just need to be very intentional about it, right? Secondly, we need to be brave and creative, because operating in the world that we're living in now, the only thing that is going to cause a shift is innovation. Yes, the fourth industrial revolution is upon us. Yes, there is a pandemic, but how do we survive these things? Using your mind. You need to be very, very brave and also creative and innovative in your business ideas, in your mindset, even in, surviving such times emotionally and mentally, right? So Schoolman says that in an article that I read, that young people need to develop 3 of these skills, right? 1, personal mastery. And I'm an advocate of, being strong and being firm in who you are, knowing who you are and what you are capable of. So Schoolman says that with skills that, young people must develop, personal mastery is number 1. Who are you, right? What are your characteristics? What characteristics do you possess? Are you an ethical person? What are your values? What grounds you? Master the sense of self, because once you understand where your strengths lie, you know where your focus should go, because anything that you focus on is what will grow. Secondly, an entrepreneurial mindset. Guys, we need to understand that, amongst many other things, entrepreneurship is one of, the vehicles that are going, to change and decrease the rate of unemployment in South Africa, in fact, in the world. So we as young people need to come with our fresh and innovative business ideas and make sure that we are able to bring them to life. So that mindset, the ability to forecast and see things before, they happen, the ability to know what skills and what characteristics will be needed to survive, specific times in this world. And lastly, the third skill will be a business acumen skill. So the ability to turn an idea into a sustainable business, not just the business, but one that is sustainable, one that is going to reignite hope, provide jobs, and you fend for your families and for your community. So it's very, very important that even when we have these solutions, we also need to understand that, yes, the solution is there, which is entrepreneurship, right? But what is your role in making sure that you are able to take that and drive it in a way that is going to be of benefit, not only for yourself, but also for your community? So as the speaker before me mentioned, that other ways, in which to combat some of the problems that we have is really to use your skills and talents, which is something that I've done for myself as well, not only being a corporate queen, but also being a brand, right? So what are you good at? What are your gifts? What are your talents? And how can you monetize on that? The beauty is that now we live in a world where you are literally able to make money off being yourself. So it's very, very important to know who you are, what you are good at, and how you can capitalize on that. So I think for now, I'll stop there because I know I can speak a lot. But yeah, I think for just as a start, that's where I'll wrap up for now.
Thank you so much, Luyanda. That was that was quite a mouthful, and thank you so much. I hope you guys are listening. I do hope you are listening, guys. And you mentioned something about the coronavirus. Now that we have this global pandemic upon us, and that the whole country has been totally rocked with the coronavirus, affecting the performance and liquidity positions of companies and pushing companies into business rescue. Companies such as Celsi, Motus Holding, Before SA, Flight Center, and SAB, to mention but a few, have been indicating possibilities of restructuring or retrenchment. Now, my question directed to Ms. Ritabile Mashala is, how safe is the youth if people who are already skilled and have been in the industry are going to be retrenched? How safe are we?
Thank you so much, Fortunate, for the question. And I think a lot, the speakers before me have already touched on that, and we have indeed experienced this. We've seen a lot of companies, like huge companies, global companies, actually retrenching very skilled people that have been with the company for quite some time because of financial constraints or cash flow constraints due to the pandemic. And what I would say is that I think as the youth, and the speakers before me have already mentioned, you need, at this point, it's all about positioning yourself. You need to position yourself, whether you're already employed or you are seeking employment. You need to position yourself and identify your strengths and make sure that the people, even the people in your organization, are able to identify or see these strengths in you. And by that, I mean, like, in your area of expertise, whatever it is that you are skilled at, what you graduated or you studied and you graduated in the work that you're doing, I would say that you need to stand out. Like, the time, and I've seen that even recruiters have tightened their requirements, or companies rather have tightened the recruitment requirements, and I've seen it in the company that I work for as well. That the company that I work for as well, that previously a lot of people would get retained and it wouldn't take much. You wouldn't have to prove yourself much. Like, there was enough room for everyone to get a place. But right now, you really have to stand out and build relationships with executives or people above you to sort of position yourself in a way that people can speak on your behalf, even in your absence. Your work can speak for itself or speak for you. So you have to sort of, what I'm trying to say, I think, in wrapping up, what I'm trying to say is your skill. You need to perfect your skill, perfect your area of expertise, get the education, all the education that you need, and put in all your hard work, all the work that, whatever tasks you are trusted with or required to do, perform those to the best of your ability and leave a mark of competence wherever whatever you do, because at this point, you really need to stand out in order to find a place or be recognizable. Like the days of just doing the bare minimum and just doing whatever to get by are over, and companies are looking for the best of the best. And there are a lot of people who have studied what you've studied, but you sort of have to prove yourself to say, I know we've studied the same thing or we have the same experience, but what else have you done, or what else can you do to stand out or to sort of outdo the next candidate? So I think I'll stop it at that for now.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mashala. Now, on what you have said about companies tightening recruitment requirements, and that the days of just doing the bare minimum are over, doesn't online learning affect the graduates of 2020 in such a way that most people who were studying before us were writing in physical exam halls? Doesn't make us feel a little bit inferior compared to our counterparts who wrote everything in physical exams?
Sorry. Yes, sorry. I was trying to get back.
No problem.
Obviously that has affected a lot of things, and it has changed learning experiences, even working experiences. We've seen in with our first years, our interns or first-time employees are not getting the benefit of the experiences that people before, or the people before them actually got, where you actually got to sit with someone and they would take you through certain tasks or work that you have to do, and that physical interaction and that ease of access to people. You don't have to ponder about writing an email that will take you 4 hours, or somebody will think you're asking stupid questions just because you had to make a call and you're thinking you're taking their time and stuff. But I think, and the speaker before me did mention about fourth industrial revolution. I think it has been forced upon us. So I don't think it makes the 2020 graduates, any less of graduates or lesser smart, not as intelligent or as competent as the graduates before. But again, it's all about using all the resources that you have, because the universities are making all these resources available online or not. And it's all about what the candidate or the student goes on further to do. Because I do also have students that I mentor and I've seen the differences between some of them actually do want to get the best out of the home and online learning and online exams and putting their ethics out and letting their ethics actually take the lead and actually say, I'm going to prepare for this exam as if I was going to write it physically. But some also that I've spoken to, you can see that I would call it cheating in an exam. They would cheat during the exam and try to ask questions to other people and try to make it sort of like a group task or exam, if I may say. And the long-term effects of that will still be a personal one, whereby you're actually disadvantaging yourself, because the others are going out of their way to actually prepare for the exam as they should. And you're just trying to get by, just trying to pass it. But then at the end of the day, that will catch up with you. And that's what I'm saying, the point I'm driving across is with regards to your expertise and positioning yourself, making sure that your skills speaks for you. At some point, it will catch up with you that you're actually not as competent as you're making yourself to appear to be because you cheated the system or whatever. So I would, I don't think online exams make the 2020 candidates lesser smart or not as competent as the candidates before, but it's all about the candidates keeping to their ethics and actually trying to get the most out of all the online material or the university material that's available to them and get the best out of it.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Ritabile. And I mean, that's a relief because I'm a 2020 graduate myself. And guys, as you heard, at the end of the day, ethics is what you do, whether someone is watching or not. So it's something that should be engraved in your personality because you need that ethics. You need it as a, what can I say? I don't want to say as a weapon, but it's something that you're going to rely on in your career, whichever career you are pursuing. Now, my final question for this round, directed to Ms. Zanile Maduna. Is the theoretical knowledge taught in university still necessary, or is it that the skill and knowledge learned in school are perfect for the industrial expectations, but the economy is just not there to maximally accommodate the skill? I mean, what could be the possible reason for the gap between what is taught in class and the real situation in the industry? And what can we possibly do as the youth to bridge that gap?
Thank you for that question. Thank you very much. I'm very, very passionate about what you're talking about because I do have experience in lecturing. So I've been in university, and this is one of the questions that we usually discussed. We had so many focus groups where we're asking ourselves, like, is this really necessary? Because, for example, you did tell people that I am a chartered accountant. So we will be teaching your financial accounting, your tax, and all of these things. But then at the end of the day, you have people who are going to training firms. And what happens is that they're complaining about the trainees. They're saying the trainees are not equipped. The trainees are not yet sufficiently, sorry, I just got distracted there. The trainees are not yet trained. Sorry about that. Okay, let me just start over with regards to that. I thought I was alone in the house, so someone just walked in. So that's why I just got distracted. So yes, that's like the main issue. That's the issue that we've been actually asking ourselves, that is this really sufficient? Is university still sufficient? Or can a student really move from school and go straight to work? Because we know that when it comes to the economy, you did say that the economy favors, the skill rather than the theoretical knowledge. So in order to answer that, I'm just gonna break it down into 3 parts, which is the first one where you're saying, is it really necessary? When it comes to that one, is it really necessary? I just wanna say that it depends. I'm an accountant, and I do believe that for each answer, it always depends, right? So it depends on what are you looking for? And I like the fact that the previous speakers were emphasizing on the fact that as the youth, we should be accountable, right? And we should understand ourselves and what we actually need. So when it comes to, is theoretical knowledge and universities, are they still necessary? It really depends. It depends on what you want, and it depends on the profession that you are gunning for. For example, as a chartered accountant, I still do believe that a student that needs to be to get that certification as a chartered accountant still needs to go to university to get that technical competence. And then after that, they will go to a training firm where they will get the professional competence, and together they will actually work out to be, something that you need. So it always depends. But then if you take the very same example, if you take an artisan whereby, it's someone who's working with all of these tools, I really do think if you want to be an artisan, it doesn't make sense for you to be studying for about 3 years up until you get to, the market and deliver whatever you need to be delivering. So in that instance, you need the skill as well as learning the theoretical part of whatever you'll be doing. So when it comes to that, the short answer is it depends. It depends on what you need. And then secondly, you did say that the economy favors the skills, right? So is all of this still necessary? What I want to highlight there is that when it comes to the economy, and specifically when you're looking at, the businesses that are hiring the youth, at the end of the day, it's a business, right? At the end of the day, it's a business. So as the youth, we should be at that point whereby we should be asking ourselves, if this was my business and I was bringing someone into my business, like, what should I consider? What should I consider? So there are two things you can consider. So let's say you do take someone straight out of school. They're not going to university to acquire some technical knowledge. You have to consider the fact that you still have to teach them something, right? So most of the times in internships or in training firms, they need to consider the fact that there will be some loss of time because of the fact that they had to teach you something. So therefore, the managers or anyone else should be taking that time to actually train you. And in training you, that means the deliverables to the client are being delayed. So in essence, there's some loss of time. So if you are a business, you should also consider the fact that if you're going to take either or, you should bear the costs, right? Because if you're going to take someone else who is experienced, then that person is going to come in, do the work, then they leave, and then you're paying for the efficiency, and you can also deliver to the client. So when it comes to what the economy also prefers, yes, they prefer the skill, they prefer experience, but then in the same breath, it also depends. It also depends. If you want to get someone that you can pay a lesser amount, then you have to take into account that there's training, that there are all of these costs that you have to take into account. And also when it comes to your last question there, where you said, how do we then bridge the gap between the expectation, right? I think what you were talking about there, it wasn't necessarily about the fact that expecting that whichever person who comes into a company will be equipped to do the work, but then it was all about the fact that, and I think the previous speakers also touched on it, it's all about basically the skills, right? The skills that the person will have. And in order for us to actually answer that question on bridging the gap between what the companies do require, as well as maybe a university graduate would be bringing, or even a high school person would be bringing, the main thing that we should be looking at is the fact that you do have your hard skills and you also have your soft skills, right? So in terms of your hard skills, most of the times we know that your hard skills, it's all of those, it's like your technical knowledge. This one, it's objective. If I get to a firm and they're like, okay, Zanele, you are from varsity, you need to produce the accounting financial statements for this firm. Because I've had that training, that is the hard skill that would be expected from me. So I'll be able to deliver, right? But then in the very same breath, we have your soft skills, of which if you have maybe Zanele from high school or for Zanele from varsity, if they get to a workplace and then they are expecting you to actually deliver and work with other people, this is when we're talking about communication skills, we're talking about professional skills, we're talking about your people skills. These are the skills whereby anyone can get these skills through working with other people, right? And this is where we can say that in terms of actually being able to bridge that gap between what the employer is expecting as well as what we are bringing as the youth, you have to distinguish between the hard skills that you are actually offering or you're looking to offer to the employer, as well as the soft skills. So the soft skills, most of them, and Luyanda also touched on the fact that we have the Internet of Things. So most of the soft skills as well, you can learn them, but then at the same time, you have to do them so that you actually get better at them, right? And when it comes to the hard skills as well, you do have the Internet of Things, but then there are certain professions whereby you have to consider the fact that here, this type of hard skill, if I want to be an astronaut, if I want to be a pilot, if I want to be a doctor, maybe I shouldn't be using Wikipedia here, you know? So I really do think it's all about us as the youth actually sitting back and saying, which ones are the hard skills or the soft skills that I'm looking to offer And if I want to stand out, I think one of the speakers, it was Ritabile, who said, you know, we need to be in that position whereby we can stand out. If I want to stand out, what can I do? So then it'll be, you know, you actually taking on courses that you need to do so that you can stand out when you get there in terms of your soft skills, even though you haven't trained on them. When it comes to your hard skills, this is when you'll have to make a decision. Is this the part whereby I go to university or I don't go to university and I choose a different path? But then at the same time, it links with what Luyanda was saying, that self-mastery is like everything, basically. I always say that as a person, you need to know your why. If you don't understand your why you are on earth and why you're doing what you're doing, then it's all scattered, right? So that's why I'm saying that it depends, but it always goes back to what you want. So in terms of you bridging that expectation, honestly, it'll depend on what you want, and it'll go back to the fact that if you want a career whereby it's mainly driven by the fact that you have to have so many certificates from high regarded universities, then that means you'd have to go to that university, and during you being at that university, you'd have to take on things such as your vacation work, internships. So that means that's you taking the power back into your hands and actually acknowledging the fact that if I want to stand out when I get to the market, then that means during my university days, I should be taking on some work to actually brush on my soft skills. So in a nutshell, it's all up to us. It's really all up to us. It's all about what we want, and in bridging that expectation gap, if we can sit down and actually think about, you know, how we map out our careers. And even if you don't want to be in corporate, if you can think about you as an entrepreneur as well, wherever you are and wherever you want to go to, you know, you have that buffering zone. You should be thinking about, what should I be doing now? What should I be doing? Should I be taking on an extra course, or should I be, I don't know, maybe you should be doing things like being part of like Golden Key Toastmasters, where you can even get those skills. So at the end, honestly, I really do think it really depends on what we would do to actually position ourselves in a place whereby the gap wouldn't be as big. We'll be able to get into the marketplace and we can deliver. Because at the end, if they do hire you as a trainee, remember, the employer or the business should have considered the fact that either way, there's going to be a loss in training you if they are taking you on and you don't have experience. So those are the things that I can say. It all depends. It all depends, Fortunate.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sanele Madonna. Wow. So guys, you say that as much as we would like to blame the economy, the government, the companies and everything that our speakers have been telling us up to now evolves around accountability and responsibility, because at the end of the day, it still comes back to us. What are we doing to improve our position in the eyes of the employers? What are we doing to raise our position to a spectacular level in the eyes of the companies that we want to employ us? So at the end of the day, we have to know that we are accountable for what we do. We should be responsible for what we want in our lives. Thank you so much, Ms. Sanele Madonna. Ladies and gentlemen, this marks the end of our first round of questions, and time is not on our side right now. I'm just going to dive into our second round of questions. When employed, young people are concentrated in types of work that render them vulnerable to income and job losses during the current crisis. And evidence from previous recessions, for instance, the 2008 financial crisis, is shown that young people who have just left full-time education are hit harder than in other age groups. So my first question in this round, directed to Ms. Mashala: what can the lockdown generation of 2020 do to avoid being employed today and waking up jobless the following day? What can we do to avoid being employed today and then just waking up jobless tomorrow?
Thank you so much, Fortunate, for that question. And what I can say is that, I mean, I'm employed myself, fortunately, And at this point, this is such a privilege. Like, I've seen very skilled people, highly skilled. And I don't think, especially in the profession, and I mean, Zanele is also already in the profession, or already the professional. I never thought I could see so many of my peers, or so many of the people I've studied with, I've trained with, I've worked with, be unemployed, because it's almost always been seen as like there's always been a great demand for chartered accountants, for example, or even for other professionals. But we've seen now in the past 6 months that I've seen people that have really struggled to even to find employment. So what I've taken from that, from my conversations with my friends, my conversations with my peers, or just general observations in the market itself, is that it's great to seek employment. And I think the first speaker, Onika, did mention something about side hustles, and which is a conversation I've had with a lot of people as well, where we've seen that it's almost impossible to just rely purely on employment. So we need to sort of shift our mindsets and focus to just outside employment, to think that you can be employed and still do other things that bring you an income on the side. So I mean, in our industry, some people can argue that you don't, or ask the question, where would you get the time to pursue the job that you have, with all the pressure that it comes with, and at the same time try to push a side hustle? But like, I think one of the speakers also mentioned that if you want to do something, like now the responsibility lies with the youth, the candidates, like all of us, to say, if you want to do something, you will go out of your way to sort of make it happen. So if it's time that you need, you will make time. You'll work around your current schedule and move things around just to ensure that you do make time for this the side hustle that you are pursuing, to just ensure multiple streams of income. Because we've seen that employment is not guaranteed anymore. Like, you can be employed today and a pandemic like this hits and the companies decide to reshuffle, to restructure, and you'll be affected. So what I can say is, as cliche as it sounds, we sort of need to move towards looking at even what is perceived to be unconventional, I'll say unconventional business ideas. And I've seen a lot of social media businesses, or people starting businesses that thrive off purely on social media, like professionals who are also pursuing businesses on social, that they run purely through social media. They do the ordering, the whole supply chain through social media. They do the ordering, they sell online, they courier, and that. So I think what we need to start thinking about is, okay, this is an idea outside my profession. I'm an accountant by profession, and I'm thinking my primary skill is professional services. But in a recession, or in an economic state such as this, what else can I do? What else can I provide? Or what else is happening around me? And how can I position myself to be a part of it? So like I said, the social media businesses, what I've seen is like people are starting like makeup lines, like a makeup line that's purely functioning online. Like, it's an online store, they sell that, and you can start thinking about things like courier services. Like, can I provide courier services? What would I need? Like, there's so many startup businesses that are based purely online, and these people would need somebody to deliver to their customers. So how can I position myself in that space, and be part of that supply chain? Do I have the necessary resources? What do I need? Like, start thinking, having those conversations. And also what I like and what I've seen about these unconventional business ideas, or the ones that I've seen on Instagram, is that these people have actually, and I'll just bring in the concept of women empowerment. I've seen that people have moved, or these ladies that are pursuing these businesses would rather work with female or younger people instead of partnering with a big courier company. They would rather partner with a startup, female-owned courier services company. So positioning yourself in these kind of businesses, or these unconventional business ideas, while you pursue employment, I think would be my response to your question, Fortunate, for now.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mashala. And I think our chapter president is saying, be diverse and not only focus on employment, build multiple streams of income, build a side hustle. So if you want to achieve it, you'll make it happen. And it just goes hand in hand with what Ms. Mashala is saying. We shouldn't be just focusing on straightly what you are studying, the career that you want to pursue. You never know what will happen tomorrow. I mean, who would have known that 2020 would see us in this long period? You wouldn't be doing everything that you had written down in your diary. So moving on to the next question. South Africa has among the highest youth unemployment rates globally, with 58% of 15 to 24-year-olds not in jobs, education, or training. In times of crisis, young people are usually the first to lose jobs and the last to gain them back. Now, my first question, directed to Ms. Onika, is, what can the Corona class of 2020 do to avoid being jobless in the coming year, whilst policies to revive the economy are still being restructured?
Thank you for that question, Fortunate. What I'd say is that if you know that you'd be graduating this year, or this is your final year, you'd probably be having the graduation ceremonies next year. That's if it would even be, there would even be such a thing as a graduation ceremony. I think what you have to do is mainly just to look at the people that you look up to. So what I'm trying to say is you need to find a mentor within the industry that you are interested in. And the reason I'm saying this is because these are people who are already inside the industry. They're also connected with people that are within the industry who know that they'll be looking for a particular graduate to come and join in, or they want to have somebody else's skills. So what I would advise is that find out which industry you're interested in, find out a particular person that perhaps maybe even suits your personality to be your mentor. That'll be the first step that you do. And then the second step is, and this is maybe if you are unable to identify a mentor. I love the fact that Uluyanda has mentioned the Internet of Things. Ratabile has also touched on fourth industrial revolution. So what you can do also, and this is what I normally do, is that you can just look up people on LinkedIn just to see who else there is in an industry that you're interested in. Where's this person based? Because some of them, they will actually mention whether they're in Pretoria or Joburg or Cape Town and so forth. And then also, I'd also say that you can also just check out YouTube. I know this is something that a lot of people just think that, no, but like YouTube is full of vloggers and all that. But YouTube is being used for a variety of things. So if you're interested, let's say, just say, for instance, you just look up, you just say economist in South Africa, there's a high chance that there'll be somebody else who might be vlogging and say that they're actually an economist. And people who are actually successful or who are making it in life, it's very interesting that these people are actually waiting for somebody else to come and approach them. They're willing to share their skills. From afar, it seems as if they are not interested, but once you approach them, remember that you also, if you look at how people behave, is that people like to notice that what they're doing is impactful towards the community. Even if this person from afar, it seems like you can't touch them. What I can say is that people are willing to share skills. People who've already established themselves, they are willing to assist. But when you're approaching this particular individual, be sure that you know what you're looking for. Be explicit. Have a pitch. So if, for instance, maybe this person just said, I only have 30 seconds, what do you want to say to me? Be clear, be direct. And also plan ahead. So plan ahead in terms of how you're going to contact this person. So that's what I would say. And another thing that I'd also say is that don't be too rigid. I know I've already mentioned that you do need to approach somebody. Don't be too rigid. Remember that you also have to be slightly open-minded. Because, for instance, you might want to be a financial economist. Maybe that's something that you're looking into. But now if we were to look into the pandemic, you might actually realize that you might end up probably considering to be a development economist, because now development economists are actually needed, because we do realize that poverty is going to be on the rise, unemployment is going to be increasing, inequality is definitely going to just keep on rising, although already in the country we are the highest in the whole world with inequality. So then in a way, be flexible, but still know what you want. If you're saying you want to be an economist, fine, maybe you want to be a financial economist, would you be open to being a development economist, for instance? So that is the advice that I could just put out there for now. Thanks, Fortunate.
Thank you so much, Onika. And that was quite an informative answer. I mean, we have to be diverse. We have to look and think outside the box. What else can we do except what we have written down that we want to achieve? Now, my final question for this round, directed to Onika again, is saying, what is the effect of globalization on youth unemployment and with limited global mobility as a result of the coronavirus pandemic? How is the youth likely to be affected?
Thanks, Fortunate. So the first part where you're saying the effect of globalization on youth unemployment. Globalization is great for youth unemployment. For instance, I've picked up from our interactions, my interactions with you, that you are from Zimbabwe, for instance. And also just looking at South Africa, we do tend to attract quite a significant number of people from other African countries. And once they do come into the country, they're able to find means to sustain themselves and also be able to send remittances home. So I do think that globalization in terms of unemployment is a great thing. And then just to move on to the second aspect of your question, where you're saying that now that we'll be having limited mobility due to COVID-19, how are the youth likely to be affected? So I would say that from my observation, I've picked up that although mobility has been restricted, if you do have a certain set of skills, you can still offer your skills online. And some of them just require you to have grade 12 matric. For instance, there are people who are already looking for tutors to say that if you are able to tutor somebody else who's in grade 12, if you're going to focus on physical sciences, English as well, and also mathematics, you can still be able to do that. So we might be limited in terms of moving around, but with the resources that we do have at hand, and also taking into account that some of the countries, when it's nighttime in South Africa, they are waking up. And I do know that some universities, including UJ, they do give out data. So if you've spotted a particular skill that you can offer to somebody else who's in Asia or USA, you're more than welcome to do so. So my advice is that we need not be disheartened and despondent. As youth, we still have the energy, we still have the drive, and now we have the internet where we can just look things up and find out where these opportunities are. Even if they're outside our borders, we can still be able to offer our skills elsewhere just through the internet. That's where I would wrap it up. Thanks, Fortunate.
Okay, thank you so much, Onika. Ladies and gentlemen, we seem to be running out of time, and it just happens when the conversation is getting more fascinating. So I'm just going to dive into our final round of questions. The expanded unemployment rate, which doesn't take into account the job search, increased from 30.9% in 2008 to 37.2% in 2018. And throughout this period, both of these rates were higher among women than men. So according to the expanded definition of unemployment, the unemployment rate amongst women is 7.5 percentage points higher than that of males. Now, my first question directed to Luyanda is, what do you think is the possible reason why women unemployment rate is higher than that among men?
Alrighty, thank you, Fortunate, for the question. So just to give you a bit of stats to add on everything that you've just said, just to give people perspective, right? So the rate of unemployment is 32.4% is to men, which is 28.3, right? Mm-hmm. Then of that amount, 30%, less than 30% of women occupy seats on the JSE. Mind you, women, form part of more than half the population at 51.1. So one would wonder, why is it that, people that are probably taking up most space in the world are the ones that are suffering the most? So our current economic model, right, is inequality by design, right? We as women operate in systems that are not designed to empower us, but also include us, right? And how dare there be economic growth, but bulk of the people are not included in this growth? So there's a lot that we need to, to bear in mind before answering that question as to why is it that women, are so marginalized, which is a very good question. If we form part of more than half the population, why is it that we are still one of the people that are being marginalized, where access is really not granted to? So first things first is the economy and the world that we live in. We live and operate in a world that is based on inequality by design in its natural form, right? So we've got a huge gender inequality problem, not only in South Africa, but also in the world. And I have to anchor, my opinion with a quote by Emma that reads, "We want to end gender inequality, and to do that, everyone needs to be on board." What really this means is that we need to call upon the men that, are very much included, not only in decision making, but also hold the power, the financial power of not only this country, but also the world. So first things first is that there needs to be gender inclusivity, and there needs to be country can ever truly develop if half its people is left behind. So instead of looking at it in terms of why this is the case, and how I mentioned when I started my dialogue today, my engagement rather, is that we need to be solution focused. So to be quite frank, I don't want to know why. I don't care why women are left behind. But what can we do now to ensure that as we grow and as we move on and we build a better economy, that half the population of the people are also included, not only in terms of decision making, but financially? We want to be part of the economic decisions. We want to be able to own things. We want to be able to sit on the boards. So the question really is, what can we do now to ensure that women are not marginalized in this country? And it's pretty much simple. Like, Emma said in her quote, that if we want to stop gender inequality, then this means that everyone needs to be on board. So we as, South African citizens, as world citizens, we need to work together to ensure that we build systems that accommodate both male and female. We build systems that will empower women and not necessarily marginalize them because of their feminine traits or their, emotional traits that they carry. Because, the one thing that I love most about women is that we as women have the power to, start a revolution and to empower not only ourselves, but a whole entire community. So our empowerment is not based on just us, but it's a ripple effect that can change generations. So why not start doing that now? So I think really, to answer your questions, like I said, we know the issues. we may not necessarily know why things happened the way that it did, but the conversations that I want to have now moving forward is that how do we change those things? Men, come on board. Women, come on board. Empower us, mentor us, help us, in terms of when we walk into that boardroom, how do we make sure that we don't feel, less than or unworthy, or feel like, feel any sort of imposter syndrome? So how are we now going to empower women and ensure, that women are being included? And there are many things that are happening now. And the one page that I really would encourage a lot of people to follow is Womanomics by Olwetu, that really challenge organization and corporates in terms of what are your womanomics like? What are your women statistics within your organization? Are women being empowered? Are women being promoted? Are they taking up space? Are they, and so forth there. So a lot of questions. And the thing is that we as women alone cannot do it, but we need the people that are the gatekeepers that are standing in front of all of these things, the systems, the financial freedom and the financial independence. We need them to be the ones to raise their hands and lift us up and empower us. So really the question is not why these things have happened, but how do we now, stand up and work together to ensure that, we are part of these boards, and that we don't form part of the minority in terms of, earnings and money, but as much as we acquire more than half the population, those stats need to be seen when it comes to, the JSE boards, when it comes to, economic independence and so forth. So that would just be my opinion. And really, it's not something that I, will have the answer to directly, but I know that in us working together and having an opinion about how we feel and how we see the world changing, a lot can happen from there.
Thank you so much, Luyanda, for such a stimulating response. And you mentioned something about women marching into the C-suite, marching into the boardrooms. That brings me to a question that I'm going to direct to Ms. Maduna. Does women leadership drive women to situations where they have to prove to men in the workplace that they're not like other women in terms of motivation and superiority? And how does this affect the support that should exist among women themselves in the workplace?
Yeah, that's a good question, Fortunate. And yeah, that question just reminds me of Dr. Judy Dlamini's book, which is Equal but Different, where she actually she actually tackles that, because she was interviewing different women in leadership and their experience in leadership, and basically their challenges in leadership, and how that is actually affecting what they are doing when it comes to giving back to other women and how they compete with other women. So actually, that book actually would actually equip you if you want more information on how to navigate such situations. But then when it comes to my opinion with regards to the challenges and what women would do in such positions, I just want us to just stop and reflect, right? One, if you're a woman who's making it into a top position, do you realize that it's because you are optimistic, it's because you are competitive, and it's because most of the times, if you are going to get that place, you're going to hold on to it, right? So that means anything that is coming across, as being a competition per se, then you'll ensure that you always keep your position. So the type of woman who would get such a position, already they are competitive and they want to remain in such a place, right? But then the other layer is that when it comes to that, I don't necessarily think it's all about the woman trying to show the other men that they are way better. But then I really do think with such women, it's all about them maintaining that type of career or position that they wanted to be in. Right. And also, I just want to go back to what Luyanda was saying, that remember, with regards to progression, it's not only about other women helping, other women, but it's a matter that has to be attended to by other genders, other races, almost everyone, right? So in so saying, I just want to say that it's really not about women showing the men, but then it's all about them maintaining that space. And I really do think if I was a woman, like I am already a woman who is climbing the corporate ladder as well, in as much as I am an entrepreneur, I really do think it depends. I always say it depends. It depends on how you view it. As you are climbing and there's someone who's already in leadership, it's all about, if, for example, I'm trying to climb, but then I really do feel like maybe this other woman is not opening up space for me, is not doing much because they are busy competing and showing other people that they are better than me. I really do think that it gets to a point whereby I should sit and actually reflect on, one, is that woman really, really doing all of that because they're trying to push me? Because you know how most of the women who make it in such positions, they know that it is a tough world, so you have to have that thick skin. So most of the times, if you are another woman who's coming into place, they would be pushing you, they'll be doing all of these things. But then as the person who wants to be in such a position, it depends on how you're going to react to it. So other people can see it as, this is the mentorship that I needed. Like, this person is being tough on me, and I know that I have to earn whichever position that I'm going to get. But then there's the other side of the coin, whereby other people can view it as, you know, it can be hate, and other people can use emotions where it's not necessarily about emotions as well. So I would say that as the person who wants to occupy that position, and remember, I am regarding what Luyanda is saying, yes, there's inequality, there's definitely, I do agree it is there, but then also, it also gets back to, if you are in that position, working towards such a position, you have to take into account that other people wouldn't just let you in if you are not ready to deal with the challenges that you have to deal with when you are in that position. And also you'd have to work around, okay, then what do I have to do now? Then maybe the particular woman that you're looking into is not the right mentor, or they're not the right sponsor. Then you have to be looking into other people. And that is why I really do think, even in my career, I've gotten to a space whereby I'm content with the fact that it's not only a Black woman who should be giving me a hand. It can be a white man. It can be anyone. It can literally be anyone. It's all about me. And that's why I always say that it's all about, you know, self-leadership. It's all about you getting to that point whereby you've done your SWOT analysis, you know, as a woman, as a Black woman, and then you know where the opportunities are, you know where the threats are, you know what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses. And the moment you are content with all of that, then you are able to navigate your way around. If someone else is being a gatekeeper and you're expecting some help from them, then you should be in a position whereby you're like, okay, Nolutando is not giving me a hand here, and she's trying to act this way. Then I've seen that actually Peter is not a bad person. I might have to go to Peter so that they actually teach me a skill or two so that I get there. So it also goes back to responsibility. And also, just to wrap up on that point, when it comes to a woman in leadership who might be training you, and you also feel like maybe they're trying to act as if they're better than you, or they're trying to ensure that you don't get there, I really do think, and this is what I've seen as well in corporate, the other thing is that I don't want to say it's only us as women. I think all the human beings is that we struggle to actually accept feedback whenever it's being given. So most of the times you would be having the younger woman working with other women, and whenever you're receiving feedback and someone is like, Zanele, I was expecting output A, you gave me output B, of which, you know, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. So what usually happens is that as a younger person, I would get to that point where I'm like, oh my God, Nolutando doesn't like me. Nolutando doesn't want me to progress. Instead of me sitting and reflecting and saying, actually, I could have done better. And actually, this is a place where I should be improving. Or, you know, I get to that point where I'm like, okay, this feedback is not true. It's just because Nolutando is not a nice person. And so therefore I should be going to Peter. So it also goes back to accountability, responsibility, and just, you know, being receptive to feedback and actually understanding the position of such a woman. Because the moment you understand someone's position and why they're not pulling you up, then you can navigate your way around actually getting to that space as well without over relying on the other person. It'll all be about how you react to everything. So yeah, Fortune, I would say that.
So is there room for compassion in the C-suites or in the boardrooms? Do we have room for such things?
I really do think there is room for compassion, but then at the same time, leadership is, you know, it's this job whereby you have to take into account, you have to make tough decisions. You have to make so many tough decisions. You have to, sometimes you are that person who has to tell 50 people that, you know, you don't have a job anymore, right? So imagine if, you know, Nolitando knows that, you know, you need to be this person who can make these decisions. And here I am as Zanele, and I'm not showing that I'm already developing such, you know, characteristics. So instead of Nolitando giving me a hug, it's better for Nolitando to just have coffee with me and say, look, Zanele, point A, B, and C actually need to be changed so that you can be a better leader in this position. So I really do think there is compassion. It's just that it'll also depend on the situation. Because if, for example, when it comes to competency, I really do think, you know, we can't be tippy-toeing around people that are not being competent, especially if they want to progress. Like, it doesn't make sense. So in such a situation, then you'd expect people to be firm and say, no, like, this is the way, or, you know, there's the door. But then there can be such instances whereby people are not performing because maybe their significant other has passed away, or maybe they have depression or certain things. And as a leader, then you can say, take family leave, do something, get a coach, do something so that actually you deal with that self-development. So I really do think there is some compassion, but then it also depends on the type of skills that we're looking into. And also when it comes to, you know, the person who also wants to progress, they should be looking at their intention to progress and how far do they really want to push to actually get there. And they shouldn't really expect other people to always tippy-toe or always like massage them and be like, this is the route, because when they do get to that position, it's highly probable that they won't be able to make the right decisions because they won't be ready.
Thank you so much, Miss Magna. Wow. Okay. You know, as much as South Africa has made great strides from the 9 August 1956 protest, some sectors in South Africa have been witnessing a deterioration in the labor market position of women. So now my question regarding this position is directed to Ritabile, saying, how can women get seats at the table with their male counterparts? And do they have to adopt an aggressive and ruthless leadership style for them to be at the top or to be heard?
Thank you, Fortunate, for that question. And I think like the basis has been laid in terms of my response to that from what Zanele spoke about in terms of compassion. Firstly, I think my starting point would be being a woman is not a disability. Being a woman is not a disadvantage. It's not a disability. We know that, oh my gosh, I'm also being distracted. Sorry, I'm back. Okay, sorry, I'm back. So as I was saying, being a woman is not a disability. And we've touched also on women empowerment. So to respond to your question about how can women get seats with their male counterparts, I think women in leadership roles or women in more senior or in more executive roles have the responsibility to actually empower the women below them, right? And I'll use an example where I actually saw that the workplace or the corporate world actually believes that that space or all those spaces belong to men, and men actually drive the decision making and all the decisions. And they last year or two, it was last year. So I was having a conversation. I'll just use this as an example. I was having a conversation with some of my friends in admin at the company that I work for at EY. So, and I was telling them, they were asking me, what are your plans for next year? Do you plan to stay? And so I was like to them, yeah, I actually thought I was going to leave, but I've had conversations and with a partner, and this person has actually inspired me to stay. We've had a lot of extensive conversation as to what are the benefits or what value can I get from this? What kind of an experience can I get from that? And this person actually positioned me and trained me, prepared me for the interviewing processes and all of that. So when I said to those friends in the firm that a partner has actually encouraged me to stay and took me through that process, and they were like, their first question or their first response was, who is he? And my thing was, why would you think this partner is a man? Why does it have to be a man? And at that point, that's when I realized that actually corporate is a male-owned world, and people have made it so okay, and everyone is actually comfortable with the fact that the men call the shots, and they don't believe that a woman can actually identify another woman and give such empowerment or opportunities to a woman. So to respond to your question, again, I think don't lose yourself as a woman in trying to fight, or not even fight, in trying to compete with your male counterparts. Believe in your skill, believe in your education, in your expertise. You are just as educated as the men. You are just as smart. You are just as experienced. And once you believe that and you actually take responsibility for your own growth and you identify such women, and I think Onika touched on mentorship, you identify such women that are in the position that you would want to be in. Identify such women, partner with them. Corporate is all about relationships, whether relationships with male figures in power, but also it still works with females in positions of power. And I would say women in positions of power have the responsibility to actually come down and train or identify women and actually make up space for upcoming women or younger or their juniors, create such opportunities for them. So I'd say don't lose your human nature. I mean, society, women are raised to be, or are expected to be humble, are expected to be respectful, expected to be compassionate, expected to be all of these great things that sort of at the end of the day will make you seem like you are a meek person or a weak person even. But I would, like Zanele spoke about compassion, I would say don't deviate from the person that you are. You are compassionate, you are respectful, you are humble, you are all of that. And I would say use those skills or those attributes, those characteristics to build relationships with people within your organization or your potential organization or whatever industry you're trying to establish yourself in. Use those to be able to approach people, because I mean, if you don't have respect, you're not, some people you may come across to other people as you feel entitled, but you can use your female or person figures or characteristics as a strength for you to actually get into relationships or start those conversations about where you want your career to go, be respectful in your approach, do that. But also where you have to be assertive and be aggressive, do that, especially when it comes to your areas of expertise. Don't hold back on the knowledge that you have, or hold back on yourself and stop yourself from applying for a certain position because you think, I'm a woman, they will probably choose whoever. But just believe that you are just as educated, you are just as skilled, you are just as equipped as your male counterparts. So instead of trying to compete, try to build networks, whether with females in positions of power or males in positions of power, using or leveraging off your woman nature, if I may say. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Mashala. So the most important thing is us not losing ourselves in an attempt to rise to the same level with our male counterparts, because at the end of the day, it is in us, it's our human nature that we are women, and you don't have to go out of your way just to prove a point that you are strong, because we all know that you are strong the way you are. I'm going to direct this question to Luyanda, who says, is women in leadership a gender issue or a culture issue in the corporate? Is women in leadership a gender issue or a culture issue in the corporate? And before Luyanda responses, I'm just going to kindly request my speakers to give sort of just short responses, because we are now past the half-7 time that we had said we're going to end the meeting. So I'm only left with 3 questions, and can we please just answer those questions as shortly as we can? You can take the floor, Leander.
Not a problem. So, women in leadership, is it a gender issue or a culture issue in the corporate world? Personally, I think it's a global issue, right? Because just like any hierarchy or system, everything comes from the top. So when I say it's a global issue, I mean that the strategy comes from the top, right? And because, it comes from there and it trickles down, it kind of sets the tone and gives strategy, from top down in terms of how things are done. Because globally, like I said, women have been marginalized, women have, been, engraved to think that they are unable to be in leadership in corporate, or given the perception that, they don't have the potential. That has kind of infiltrated into different organizations, into corporates, into systems, and this is where we are now. So I really don't think that it's a gender issue. I think it's, a world issue. It's a global issue. And worst of all, in fact, it's a mindset issue. Gender inequality is a mindset issue. It's the fact that somebody thought that women are not capable. And that mindset has kind of infiltrated into systems, infiltrated in the form of power, and have kind of closed women off. So it's really not a corporate issue, because corporate are people that occupy, the seats, that occupy and hold the power. So it's really not something that we can blame on a building or on a system, but rather on a person or a people. And really it is a mindset issue. So to be very brief, that's where I'll keep it at.
Thank you so much, Leander. My second from last question is directed to Ms. Zanele Maduna. Ms. Maduna, what is your take on corporate bullying, and in what position does that leave women?
Thank you, Fortunate. I'll try to be brief because this is such a heated question on corporate bullying. But then when it comes to bullying, I just want to say bullying is something that is everywhere. We have to remember that as kids, there's bullying, and you go to university, there's some bullying as well, and then you get to corporate and there's bullying. But then now, because it's with adults, I really do think we get to a point whereby now we want to treat it differently. So what I want to say on that is that usually if you are a kid and you are being bullied, what usually happens is that you go and you tell your parent, right? And then your parent deals with whichever situation. So with regards to that, what I'm trying to say is that now as adults, when you get to corporate, you're now getting other adults who are actually bullying you. It's actually, most of the times, it is your responsibility to actually like tell an adult. And what do I mean by tell an adult? By tell an adult, I mean that as you can either be a woman or any other person who's being bullied, you need to actually learn skills. Because remember, it is corporate. So after all, there will be certain skills that you would need to learn so that you navigate and actually, you know, if you want to rise, so that you can actually rise, right? And one of the things is that if you are being bullied and you want to do something about it, then what you should actually start learning is to actually start learning to document things. Because what usually happens is that people are being bullied, but then they're not documenting. This is not documented in emails. It's not documented in instant messages. It's not documented anyway. So now you go into human resources and you're complaining about being bullied, but then what happens? Nothing happens. And that's why people end up being depressed, and you know, people end up being fired because now you don't have the evidence to show that you are being bullied. So first of all, if you are being bullied, learn to actually develop that skill to actually gather the evidence so that you can use it and fight against what you need to actually fight against. And then secondly, I would also say, if you, and I like how Luyanda opened this when she was saying that we have to be solution driven. I also believe the same thing. So if you are in an organization whereby you realize that there are people who are bullying you, I really do think mentorship is important, right? But also sponsorship is important. And you have to realize that in a corporate environment, especially if you want to rise up, you need to have both. You need to have a mentor as well as a sponsor. And if you don't understand the difference, a mentor can show you the, you know, the route and everything and be like, okay, you need the skill, you need that. But then a sponsor is actually someone with influence. Someone who will always keep you in mind if there are other opportunities or anything else. It's someone who can say, I can bet my 10 pounds on Zanele because I know Zanele can deliver. So as a person, if you do find yourself either in an environment where you are being bullied, or even if you are not being bullied, you actually need to be in a position whereby you always have a mentor or a sponsor you can always call out to. Because in such an instance, you can be in a position whereby there's a bully that you can fight against because you have your evidence, you know, you have the whole HR and everything. But then there can be instances whereby your bully is so powerful to an extent that you might lose your job. And you know, there can be instances whereby you are that breadwinner at home and you can't afford to even lose their job. And you did mention the fact that, you know, corporate bullying in relation to women, you can be a single parent on top of all of that. And yet you are being bullied, but you're thinking, if I lose this, I'm losing the bread. And if I'm losing the bread, what's going to happen to my child? What's going to happen to everyone who's depending on me? So you will be in that position whereby you're like, this person is so, or these people are so influential to an extent that I can't afford to say anything because I lose my job. So that's why it's important to build other relationships, to have the mentors, to have the sponsors, whereby you can say, okay, there's no way around this. Sponsor is then opportunity where, you know, I can actually swiftly, you know, grab such an opportunity. Or you can also speak to your mentor and they can also show you other channels that you can navigate to so that you don't lose the job entirely. So I really do think in terms of, I'm trying to be brief, but then in terms of bullying, I really do think when it comes to how we carry ourselves as women, it doesn't mean that we are more susceptible to bullying compared to other genders. I really do think it's and I also like what Luyanda has been saying, it's also a mindset thing, because the moment you see yourself as that person who can deliver in a corporate environment, then, you know, it's not about your gender, it's not about your race and all of that, but it's all about the fact that I'm this person, I'm delivering in this environment, and in order for me to navigate this environment that I'm finding myself in, then I'll have to do 1, 2, 3. So yeah, I'll just keep it short and leave it there, Fortune.
Thank you so much, Miss Madonna. I mean, that was a very stimulating response. Finally, I'm going to have to request all of my speakers to just give us a brief of what they have to say to young people. I was going to say young Black women, but I feel like it has to be all of us. What do you have to say to young people about the careerist life and the entrepreneurship life? So I'm starting with Luyanda.
Okay, briefly, I think my message would be anchored on the scripture taken from Esther 4, verse 14, that says that you have been called for such a time as this, right? God has placed you here for a specific reason, and specifically during this time. So once you understand that, everything else becomes easier. Let go of, those limiting self-beliefs about yourself and your potential. And always remember that if you want to see a difference in the world that we live in, and if anything is to be, it is really up to you. So at all times, believe in yourself. Call things out that don't, match your values and your beliefs. Get a mentor, like my co-panelists have said, but always believe in what you carry, protect it, enhance it, and remember that you have been called for such a time as this. And I wish everybody well in their different journeys, whether it's be as an entrepreneur, as a professional, whatever it is that you believe that you can be and you want to be. I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you so much, Luyanda. Ms. Onika, what do you have to say to young people about the careerist life or the entrepreneurship life?
What I would say is that you can just keep this in mind, that nothing worthwhile is easily obtained. Even if perhaps you'd be one of the fortunate ones whereby maybe you had already secured a graduate program, you already have a spot within there, just know that just because you've entered slightly easier than your fellow classmates, it doesn't mean that when you get there, you need to relax. So basically I'm saying there's always something to be learned. Try to ensure that at least once a week, once you've entered into a particular company, once a week you have sat down with somebody, even if it's just for a quick coffee, or you are by the water dispenser. But now that those things don't exist, thanks to Covivi, just ensure that once a week you do interact with your team members, even if it's just a quick WhatsApp call. Such things, they end up having an imprint on whomever you would have been interacting with. You're being seen as human. And also those conversations, just prepare for them, just to know that you might just want to discuss something that is related to your job, but it hasn't yet come out yet. Or perhaps maybe you have a particular suggestion. And lastly, I want to say that if you're one of the fortunate ones that do get an internship or a learnership, or you're part of a graduate program, when you get your contract, negotiate your salary. And I know this might be like, oh my goodness, why would you do that? The thing is, whenever you actually end up negotiating your salary, it shows us that you're somebody else that we can have within our team. It shows that you won't be a pushover. So, and maybe this varies from sector to sector, but the industry that I'm in, we want people who are outspoken, we want people who can sit down and mention what they are looking for as clearly as possible. So do negotiate, and in your negotiation would also be looking in terms of what are you saying you're going to offer that's different? Why do you think that the offer that we're giving you is not the best for you yet? It doesn't reflect your worthwhile. And even this, after negotiating, what we are sure of is that once you enter the industry, you're going to make sure that you deliver, because at the end of the day, you are that particular graduate who did negotiate. So it'll be something that will always push you. So that's where I would end it for now. Thanks, Fortunate.
Thank you so much, Onika. I'm going to direct the same question to Ms. Ritabile Mashala. What can you say to us?
Thank you so much, Fortunate. I would say whatever it is that you want to pursue, go for it. Like, try it, whether it's employment, whether it's you trying to get into business, just do research. If it's a certain employer or company that you are targeting, do research about that. Reach out to people. Like LinkedIn, social media has made it so easy and has made people so accessible. And I mean, the worst that anybody can say, like if you reach out to somebody and you're asking about something, the worst they can do is to ignore you or say no to your request if you're requesting their time or whatever. But knock, whatever, like if you're doing research, you want to speak to people in the industry that you are in, reach out to people. People have got a lot of knowledge and they have a lot of experience. We've been through varsity, we've made bad career decisions, or we've made mistakes, and there's a lot of knowledge from people around you and people above you doing what you are also trying to do, whether in business or in employment. So like, yeah, what I would say is go for it. If you want to reach out to someone, just send that message. If they ignore you, then it's fine, you would have tried, but whatever it is, just go for it. Yeah, that's all I could say. I am going to say.
Thank you so much, Miss Mashala. And finally, Miss Sanele Madonna.
Okay. So I just want to say, because I'm a professional person and I'm also an entrepreneur. So the advice that I'm going to give to young women is just from a human being to a human being. And firstly, I want to say, remember, we are all seeking to be the best versions of ourselves, right? And in so saying, I just want to say, remember to always try and know your why. Like just understand your why. Understand why are you on earth. And the reason I'm saying this is because either you would be going into a certain career field or you would be starting a business. But then the main thing is that there will be distractions, there will be competition, there'll be so many things. But then if you know your why, you know why you started, it's highly probable that you will do better. And then the other thing is that once you found your why, the key thing is that you have to remember that all the answers are within you. So remember that you are a spiritual being. Because remember, when you came to earth, you came as a spiritual being, and then you had so many human experiences. So what's happening now is that you're a spiritual being, you have your own human experiences, so many other people are having their own human experiences, but then what usually happens is that, you know, we tend to shift because we start comparing ourselves with other people's human experiences. But then if you take time to remember that, you know, you're a spiritual being, and you take time to actually always dig deep on a daily basis, either through a prayer, meditation, whatever works for you. But remember that you always need to tap in so that you can find those answers. It might not be Zanele who gives you that answer. It might not be Ritabile Luyanda. We might not have those answers, but then always remember that you always have that answer inside of you. And if all else fails, just remember that the best thing that you can ever do for yourself is to always be better than yesterday. As long as you are better than yesterday, it can be in your career, it can be in your entrepreneurship, wherever you are. If you are better than yesterday, then it's most likely that in a longer term, you'll get to whichever destination that you want to get to. But then in so saying, I want to say that there isn't such a thing such as a destination. It's a path, it's a journey. And remember that if you know your why, you connect with yourself, the path will always be made clear. So yes, that would be my parting words. Thank you, Fortunate.
Thank you so much, Miss Madonna. And thanks to all of the speakers for such eye-opening views. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to have to answer your questions that you asked. So we have Miss Golane Flora Temba saying, what is greenfield and brownfield investments? What is greenfield and brownfield investment? I remember it was Miss Onika that talked about it, right? Mm-hmm.
So greenfield investment is, let's say, for instance, Pick and Pay decides that they want to have a new product that they're going to offer, right? So this is something that is completely new. So that is a greenfield investment. Then brownfield is mostly just expansion. So maybe they'll just be like, we have a particular range, we just want to expand on it.
Okay, thank you so much. I hope, Miss Flora, you've been answered. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. We are 30 minutes over the time that we're supposed to end, and I'm really grateful. We've come to the end of our final session of the Rethinking Economics of South Africa Youth Conversations. It has been quite an educating, informative, and eye-opening journey. And for those that were not with us in the first and second sessions, an overall comprehensive newsletter is going to be available. Now, my question to the youth is, what choice will you make when you live here? Will you take time to self-introspect, identify your passion, and seek help in areas that need advancement? Or will you go about your normal routine of doing things? I want to take this time to thank our speakers for making time to be with us this evening. We thank you so much for your wise words, and this is a huge step forward, walking away from the circle of poverty and unemployment. Thank you to everyone that is here with us. I mean, it's a Friday. Anyone could have been anywhere but here, but you guys showed up. Thank you very much. Special thanks to Golden Key UJ Exec and Golden Key South Africa for helping us and supporting us all the way. At this point in time, I will hand you over to our chapter president for closing remarks, Mr. Andrew Sen.
Thank you so much, Fortunate. All I just have to say with regards to everything that has been said is the fact that we thank everyone for coming through and for all the speakers. You guys, this has really been insightful and very much motivational. And I'm not gonna take so much of your time because already we are, we've taken more time than anticipated. But thank you. It's a Friday night, and because it's level 2 lockdown, so people are now indulging on hot beverages. Hence the low turnout, but we will upload this on our YouTube platforms so that they can go and check it out, because we've been getting good numbers in before, but we really take your time. We really appreciate you taking your time today to be with us. It is truly an honor and a privilege. And as Fortunate said, we will be having a framework that will be done to comprehend all the sessions that we have done. So you guys were part of our third session. We've had similar conversations since July, at the end of July and at the end of August, to discuss these type of issues around youth unemployment and how to actually come about to combat this issue. So during the month of September, we will invite you again, but for you guys to just come and basically see how is the framework, where we present it to everyone who has a speaker throughout this entire session or this entire series before we actually send it out to civil society, private sector and public sector. But once again, thank you. And thank you to all the attendees that took their time on a Friday night as well to join us. And thank you, our facilitator, for facilitating it smoothly and professionally. So, and thank you to Golden Key Head Office for also ensuring that the event goes smoothly and the event is recorded as well. So thank you from my side, and may you all have a great evening and a good weekend. Bye.